system is not working, and it is not working because it lacks a vital ingredient. The experts mean well, but a centralized system cannot possibly have that degree of personal concern for each individual child that we have as parents. The centralization produces deadening uniformity. It destroys the experimentation that is a fundamental source of progress. What we need to do is to enable parents, by vouchers or other means, to have more say about the school which their child goes to, a public school or a private school, whichever meets the need of the child best. That will inevitably give them also more say about what their children are taught and how they are taught. Market competition is the surest way to improve the quality and promote innovation in education as in every other field.
The one unsurprising thing about these comments is that all of the opposition to allowing the market work comes from people who have a very strong vested interest in the present public school system. I am not proposing, we are not proposing to destroy the public school system. We are only asking that the public school system should be free to compete, should be open to competition. If it is really as good as you people make it out to be, it has nothing to worry about. Now, how do you explain the fact that there is no area of the free market, no area of the private market, in which the poor people who live in the ghettos of our major cities are as disadvantaged as they are with respect to the kind of schooling they can get? I want you to name me any aspect of the private market. They're not as disadvantaged in the kind of supermarkets they can go to. They're not as disadvantaged even in the kind of housing they can occupy as they are in respect of the kind of schooling their children can go to.
What's your evidence for that? I don't think you have any evidence for that.
They're trying to get out.
They're trying desperately to get out. Families who have very low incomes are trying to get into the parochial schools that you're talking about.
And they're trying to get out of the slums, and they're trying to get into different neighborhoods.
They're trying to do all sorts of things. They're doing better on that. They're doing better on that. And instead, in a free choice system, you would have more heterogeneous schools, in my opinion, far less segregation by social and economic class than you now have. Because
now what
Dr. Henry?
Yeah,
it just doesn't hold up by the very examples you've used.
Excuse me, it so happens that right now, the parochial schools are the only alternative really available to low-income people.
Do they take all the children who want to get in?
The reason for that is that it's very hard to sell something when other people are giving it away. Anybody who wants to send his child to a non-public school has to pay twice for it, once in the form of taxes and once in the form of tuition. Under the kind of voucher scheme that Jack Koons and I would support, that difficulty would be eliminated. You would now have a situation in which the low-income people would have the kind of bargaining power, the kind of possibility of choice that those of us who are in the upper income groups have had all along. There's a fundamental difference between government giving money to an institution, to a school. That does lead to control directly. And government giving money to people to use. The food stamps don't determine what people buy with their food stamps. They may be a good or a bad program. That's not my point. My point is that don't underestimate the crucial difference between making money available to parents to spend as they choose to exercise their judgment and making money available to institutions like schools, which they spend subject to all the conflicts which they have with school teachers and others. Do not underestimate the role which bad schooling provided by our present governmental mechanism has played in creating poverty. It's been a major source, particularly among black and white teenagers coming up to the slums. It's been a major source of their difficulties of getting out of the trap of poverty. So it's not a one-way relation between poverty and the schools. The schools have themselves bear a great deal of responsibility.
The reason the schools bear it, and it isn't the schools directly, it's that we don't put enough resources in for children who need special and additional help because they are not getting it in their homes, or they're not getting the same sort of support in home and community as middle-class kids do. And then we wait until a child is 16 or 17 and drops out, and then we provide a youth employment program for them where we spend between $5,000 and $10,000 to try to undo what could have been undone in the first, second, and third grade if we had a decent investment in our public schools.
I have never yet known anybody who was trying to defend a government program who didn't say all its evils came from the fact that it wasn't big enough. Now, the fact is,
Would you think that children with problems need the same amount of education and the same amount of investment as children who don't have special problems?
Some facts. The number of students in schools has been going down. The total expenditures on schools, allowance being made for inflation, after allowing for inflation, has been going up. The number of pupils has been going down. The number of teachers have been going up. And by all accounts, the quality has been going down. Higher education is the most disgraceful example on the record. I know of no governmental program that seems to me is so unfair and disgraceful in imposing costs on low-income people to benefit high-income people. We in the upper and middle-income classes have conned the poor in this country to supporting our children in going through college and university, and we scream to the treetops about how disinterested and how public-spirited we are. We ought to have a system under which everybody who wants to go to college can go there. He has to pay his own way, either now or later on. It's not a minor item that if you take the total receipts from expenditures on higher education going to the lower classes and the total taxes they pay that are used for higher education, the lower classes are paying more than they're getting, and the higher classes are getting more than they are paying for. Now, I'm myself a beneficiary of this subsidy. I'm one of the worst cases on record. I went to a state school, Rutgers University. I went on a state scholarship. The poor suckers in the state of New Jersey paid for my going to college. I personally think that was a good thing. There are many people who have different opinions about that. But I personally think it was a good thing. But I don't see any reason whatsoever why I shouldn't have been required to pay back that money. Individuals pursuing their separate individual interests also provide public benefits. Of course, I think that the public benefited from my getting an education, but the primary beneficiary was me. I was the one who got the benefit from it. I was the one who had the higher income.
No, you benefited.
I know I benefited. I don't know about the public.
I can't think of anything that would frighten poor people more than the thought at the end of the 4 years or 6 or 7 or 8 years of higher education, they have this albatross around their neck.
Only if they're rich.
There's no albatross.
Only if they become rich.
The future.
There's no albatross. Would you say the same thing about people who start businesses? You've got millions of people in this country who start private businesses every year. Many of them lose money. Many of them make money. Would you say that nobody is going to start a business because he might end up with an albatross? You want to let people decide that for themselves. What I really want to know is a very different thing. How do you justify taxing the people in Watts to send the children from Beverly Hills to college? That's a demagogic statement, but it happens to be empirically a correct statement. How do you justify it? But I want to suggest to you that we're not proposing, neither Jack Coons nor I, to dismantle anything. We're only saying put up or shut up. Either show that you can produce the kind of education people are willing to go and get, or reduce your size, go out of business. We are only proposing that there be a wider range of alternatives. Now, it is not true. Now, let me put a different point to you. There are a small minority of people who are problems. Is it desirable to impose a straitjacket on 100% of the people or 90% of the people in order to provide special assistance or special help to 4 or 5 or 10% of the people? Not at all. I think that there's a big difference between two kinds of systems. One kind of system in which the great bulk of parents have effective freedom to choose the kind of schools their children go to, whether at the lower or the higher level. And there are programs and provision for a small minority. That's one kind of a system. That isn't what we have now. What people in the public school system, people like yourself, do, they do not want to give up the monopoly of the public school system any more than the post office wants to give up the monopoly of delivering mail.